Okay, everybody, in case you got shortness of breath and heart palpitations and whatever from doing the Pythagorean theorem equation solution from earlier, I'm going to introduce you to a tool I've built us that'll help us get through all those calculations without having to kind of sweat it. If you're on, this is the course information page for the website. You've probably been going to the schedule page for a few days now. That's probably the only page you've had to visit. The next link I want to have us open is this Excel calculator link. It's a pretty simple spreadsheet. Click on it, then hit OK. And then depending on your computer, you might get a little warning up here that says enable content. Go ahead and enable it. It's just Microsoft being a little bit worried about a spreadsheet feature that I put into here. Not to worry at all. And what this is it's basically, it's a spreadsheet for sure. But for those of you that are worried about using spreadsheets, don't worry about it because it's not really going to require you to do anything except change numbers up here. So in here it says insert the rise and either the run or the road at right. And then I said make sure the units agree. That's just a little reminder. We'll get to that momentarily. So what I've done, I don't know why I put these numbers in here, but I put in some kind of a road that has a rise of 14, which would be this little tiny bit right here, and a run of 489, which would be that green line right there. And if that's the situation, if that's the setup of this road, that means that road has a grade of 3%. Don't worry about right way versus shortcut way just now. I'll get to that in a second. Also, since I often get a question about how angles are tied to all of this, I threw in an angle formed. So the angle that you'd actually get between these puppy dogs right here would be 1.64 degrees, which is extraordinarily small, very, very tiny angle. So you can go up here and change anything you want in these values. So for example, suppose the road actually rose 25 feet instead of 14. And if you press enter then, it's going to update. You might notice this got a little bit steeper because it still runs 489, but now it rises 25 instead of 489. That now has a grade of 5%. And what Excel is actually doing is just dividing 25 by 489. Same thing you did in the last day's worth of work, doing all the divisions. The angle now is closer to 3 degrees. And you can keep changing it. Maybe it's a 50-foot rise over a 489-foot, run. That's now a 10% grade and about a 5.84 degree angle. And you can change these to whatever you want them to be, 100, and 200. I mean, you can go completely bonkers and have fun with it. You can change the run too. Make the run be 200 feet as well. Some people don't realize this, but when a rise, the grade of a 200 rise and a 200 run is actually 100%. I often ask students in class what they think a 100% grade looks like. And I wish I could have you all in class and ask you this myself. And very often they put their hand up and down, straight up and down. And the trick with that is straight up and down doesn't have a grade. Like, for example, I can't put straight up and down. I can't put a run of 0 in and press enter because Excel is now trying to divide by 0 as it's telling you right now. That would be straight up and down. You can make a run of 1, which would be an exceptionally steep. It's very hard to even see that road right. Well, the road's the blue line. The rise is that orange line. I don't know if you can see that right there. Let's bump it out a little bit more, maybe 3 feet. See if we can see it more. Not really. Let's make it 10. There's a very, very steep 2,000%, right? Rise divided by run as a percent. So 20 divided by 10 is, or excuse me, 200 divided by 10 is 20, and 20 as a percent is 2,000%. You can have any percent you want, any percent mathematically that you want, if you can arrange the rise and the run in a certain way. I mean, you can make it 1, you can make the run 0.1 for that matter. I mean, you can create a grade as large as you need it to be. It's getting a little ridiculous. I mean, we're not actually going to see stuff like this unless you're clinging to a rock face or something like that. But the interesting thing about 200 by 200 is the 45-degree angle that is formed. It's actually a very special angle in construction. Anybody that's ever built anything using 45-degree angles, which is actually pretty common. I'm going to make a pretty steep road here, a little less steep maybe. Let's make it about a 60-degree angle. There you go. So I wanted to make sure you see the color coding. If you can see the rise, which sometimes you can't, sometimes it ends up disappearing off the side. I haven't quite figured out why yet. But if you see the rise, I've color coded it orange. The run I've color coded green, and the road I've color coded blue. I don't know why I picked those colors, but I did. And that way you know what you're putting in up here. Okay. Now, you've seen a couple. I want to go through now a couple heads ups about this spreadsheet. It's super handy. It's super helpful, I think. But there are some things you want to be careful about. So suppose you come in here and you decide to, instead of overwrite that number, you just hit delete. Now the calculator can't do the math. So you get this first number error, and then I've programmed the spreadsheet to say, hey, don't forget the second measure. Don't forget the second measure. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to put in the ones from your quiz yesterday. A 46-foot rise and a 260-foot run. Okay, and there's the 18% that you got on your quiz. There's my road that I was riding up, tilted at 10 degrees, which if you look at that, you're like, man, Sean, that's not steep at all. And again, I encourage you to go out and check that road out. It's ridiculous. It looks like a wall when you're riding up it. It's incredible how only a 10-degree angle can feel like somebody's shoving you on the face while you're trying to make your way up it. But here's the special part, I think, about what the spreadsheet allows us to do. I'm going to delete. All I'm doing when I say delete, I'm clicking in the cell and pressing the delete button on my keyboard. And it says, don't forget the second measure. I'm going to come in here in the road box, and I'm going to type 264, and I'm going to press enter. Now, some of this is going to look familiar. For example, the angle is still 10.03 degrees. That's the angle right there. And the right way grade is 18%. What I've done now is I've given you something called the shortcut way grade. And I'm going to put this on the screen here. The right way grade is rise over run. Always. That's the way grade is defined. But sometimes it's okay to simply do it the shortcut way, which is take the rise and divide it by the road and not mess around with all the goofy Pythagoras. The reason I bring this up is sometimes when you're working on grade type problems and you don't feel like either A, doing Pythagoras, or B, breaking out this spreadsheet, sometimes you can very quickly just divide the rise and the road and get close enough. You might notice these are only off by about 1%. And it's probably even less than that. Let's get a few more decimal places of accuracy and take a look. Oh yeah, they're not even off by, so what I did there, just so you know what I did, I clicked in those cells and I went up here and I boop, boop, hit that button right there, which is increase decimal. They both would round to 17.5%. This one rounds to 17 point, well, this one is 17.42 and this one is 17.69. So even though one rounds up to 18 and one rounds down to 17, they're only off by about 0.3%. That's very, very, very close. Now, later in the quiz, I'll ask you to find some situations of rises and runs and roads that are actually not very close, because the shortcut doesn't always work. The shortcut works when it works, and when it doesn't work, it blows up in your face, and I'll have you analyze that later. Okay. So a couple of the things, you remember getting an error when you didn't have enough cells filled in. You can also get an error if you have too many cells filled in. If you fill in 3, it's going to say you entered one too many measures. It's going to give you answers down here, but I want to make sure, depending on, I mean, in this case, it's correct because these 3 numbers are all the correct numbers. The problem is if you don't put correct numbers in here and you have too many, Excel is going to decide based on something what to do the math on, and it might not be the ones you want. So make sure you don't put more than 2. The rise, definitely, and either the run or the road. So pull one of those out. I'll pull the run out. You might have noticed earlier, too, that when we don't have the road and we have the run, that it doesn't give you the shortcut way grade. And that's because there's no reason to use the shortcut. If you've got the rise and the run, you just divide them, and that's the grade. The only reason you need the shortcut is if it's hard to get the run. For example, in our case with Palisades Drive. That's the only case. Okay. The only other thing to think about or to talk about here is make sure you don't change anything in these cells here. You might notice if you click in one of these cells and look up here, these are all formulas. These are all formulas, and these are all formulas. There's a lot of stuff hidden around the spreadsheet. I haven't quite figured out how to what's called protect these cells, which would make it impossible for you to actually get in there and change them. But for now, just don't. Now, let's suppose you're clicking around and you press something and hit enter and boop, it pops out and you erase the formula like this. You erase the formula. You know, you hit delete. Oh, crap. Oh, crap. You can always just close the spreadsheet and reopen it. And it's going to be saved. I mean, I've got the whole thing on the website for you to use for your edification. All right, my friends, let's put this thing to use with some examples pulled off of Strava.